So Brian White is with me today, and we are going to um, either agree or disagree with one of our best friends' guest. So we had Herbert the other day interviewing Nicholas Colas, who is a 30-year veteran of the financial side of the automotive industry. And it gave a great presentation. I thought it was one of the better interviews that has ever been, other than the ones that you and I have done with Herbert.
I
Those
mean,
are always
clearly,
in the top. But I mean, after that, then Nicholas Colas would certainly be in the running. But it was informational and useful, I thought. So anyway, that's what I'd like to talk to you about today, Brian.
it's exciting. The video was long. It's an hour long, but Nick Colas is a very sharp guy. His bona fides are indisputable. He's got decades in the industry. He's helped companies IPO. He's pulled companies back out of the fire. Uh, he knows a lot about what he's talking about. So when he talks, I take it seriously.
I did also, but then there was a couple of times when I was not as inclined to go along with him. So I'd like to just think in terms of what did we agree with that Nick said and what did we disagree with. So you've just listened to it recently. I
Mm-hmm.
listened to it a couple of days ago. What were your first impressions in terms of what your takeaways were?
Well, he's leaning a bit heavy on the what ifs. Uh, there's a lot of doom and gloom in the market right now, and I think it's more specific to other manufacturers than it is to Tesla. Tesla is a unique company. It has there are things about it. One of the parts of the discussion was is this the iPhone Android dichotomy we see today? And iPhones, famously, Apple fans are rabid, but Tesla fans put them to shame.
Yeah,
There
that's
is
true.
there you will not see a product launch where existing iPhone owners go down to the store and perform orientations on behalf of the employees.
Right.
That's not a thing.
Or help
Where
make the
people
deliveries or whatever.
or help make the deliveries or bring in boxes of donuts to thank the hardworking what do they call those people that work there? Don't they have some silly name for anyway? We'll just call them Imagineers. I know
Yes.
that's a different company,
Yeah, I
but
think that's been
still.
taken. Yeah. Yeah. So we can all agree that Tesla is unique in its fan base. And I think this guy, well, first of all, this guy is a bull, clearly
Hmm.
a bull, loves Tesla. One of the things he said, which think was up for discussion, had to do with the valuation of the company, which he said he couldn't even get to current values without including an option. He called it like an option on FSD. So in other words, you have the underlying company, what it's doing now, which is only worth X. He didn't say what that number was, but he says in order to get to the current number, you'd have to add on an idea in the head of the investor that FSD will happen at some point, and you need that to get to the current number. So I'm wondering what you needed to get to 400. If you needed
Well,
that to get to 200.
Toyota has respectable margins and produces 10 times as many cars, six to
Five
eight
times,
times as
five,
many.
five and a half times.
Yeah, substantially more.
Right,
But Toyota's worth a quarter of what Tesla is.
right,
So that means that if the margins stay the same, Tesla would need to get to, you know, 15 million units. But it's very possible that margins will erode in the future as cars are commoditized, as this technology is in its infancy. And while the other guys are years behind, uh, they will catch up as the technology plateaus. Now, is the technology going to plateau in 5 years? I don't think so. I think we're looking more at 10 to 20 years. But in any case, if you're looking at Tesla strictly as an automotive manufacturer, I think 400 billion is too high.
So my theory would be that you've got a company that PEs generally are the result of what people think the growth rate's going to be. You've got Toyota not growing, General Motors not growing, Ford shrinking, Mercedes shrinking. I mean, just go down the list. Right. These companies are shrinking. So typically the PE on those kind of companies are going to be in the 10s or the 20s because they're not growing. Where Tesla has been growing 50% a year. And when you throw in energy, now has the potential for the profits to grow at more than, well, maybe even 70, 80% a year. So therefore the PE should probably be in the 60, 70 range, maybe even 100. And this guy even said that the PE maybe should be as high as 100. He didn't ignore that fact. But if the profit next year is probably going to be in the range of $5 a share, and you put a 60 on that, then it should be selling for 300 now.
Right. And we just said automotive. We didn't include it. What I said did not include energy yet. Stationary storage. Yeah. Stationary storage is monumental in scale and so far essentially untapped. I wouldn't say as fast as you can build cells, you can build megapacks, but we will reach that point, I'd say, in the next year or two. And the fact that we're already showing $500 million there is should be eye-opening. If that was its own company, its valuation would be at least 50 billion, I would think. But yeah, probably, and that's not counting the growth that's built into it.
Right.
Once you look at the growth, maybe 100 on its own just for energy. And they're cutting prices to keep the margins reasonable, which is insane because they still have a 2-year backlog. So just automotive and energy alone, I would say you don't necessarily need FSD to get all the way there. Premium connectivity, it's $10 a month. No big deal. I don't think I've ever been in a Tesla that didn't have it. Yeah, I'd say that's true. So if you got 4 million cars, that's 40 million a month in revenue just from that.
Right.
Now, of course, not everyone has it. And maybe in some markets it costs more or less, but it's a large and growing amount of money. And then on FSD, there's a second component to it that I think is being overlooked, which is, you know how you can only count so much of the revenue until you deliver it?
Right. Yes.
Unless it's a subscription, in which case you book 100% of it right now, because at the end of the month, whatever we delivered is what you got.
Right.
So that's a very different thing. And I think if they were to reduce the price of the FSD subscription to increase, there's a sweet spot. And I don't think 200 is it. I think in its current feature set today,
when it's 100, when it's 100%, when it's 100% working, 200 will be no big deal. Yeah.
I think almost everyone would buy it at 200, maybe not, but I think the take rate will obviously climb dramatically. But today, if it was 100, I think that might be closer to the sweet spot where they're able to bring in and book so much revenue, even at 10% at $100. What's that? 400,000, $40 million a month.
Yeah.
In just plain old revenue. And, slap your PE on that and you've got a big chunk of cash right there. So
and then there's the charging stations. I mean, it just goes on and on. So I thought that his analysis of that was a little thin. I thought maybe if he was going to say that, maybe he just needed to give it a little more context. But I think it's underpriced right now. I think it's dramatically underpriced right now. And especially if you take into consideration his idea of throwing on the optionality, not of just FSD Robotaxi, but also of Optimus and Dojo, and not to mention semi trucks. Anyway, so then another one that I had a little bit of a problem with was his idea of who the winners are going to be. Now it's so hard to know, right now, which of the car companies, the legacy and even the startups, are going to be, the biggies in 7 years. Everybody's looking at 2030, of course, as okay, what's going to be in 2030? But he had the only one that he really said he thought was going to be like absolutely going to be still around in 2030 was Mercedes. What did you think about that idea?
I think that's reasonable. I do think that's reasonable because they've got such brand loyalty, they've got such brand cachet that I think they can weather any storm. They've already got a variety of EVs on the market in the US too, but even more in Europe. I think they've got a lineup, and even though they're desperately overpriced, they're still selling them. So I would not be surprised one bit to find that Mercedes survives. I don't know about thrive. They also have the benefit of, today at least, very good margins. They're one of the few companies that routinely has a better margin than Tesla has over the last few years. And that's not unusual for Mercedes. And I don't know how you get to that place, but they're there.
So on BYD, he said that he thought they were kind of second on his list. Like probably they look like they have a pretty good chance. He didn't say they're not even as strong as Mercedes. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, I got BYD as being second in the world to Tesla in 2030, at least in terms of unit volume. Probably not in terms of, there might be somebody else that passes them in dollar volume, but in unit volume, I think they're number two. And he was kind of, yeah, well, they're probably going to do okay.
Well, what I learned from his talk was something that was brand new to me was, how do you measure the quality of engineering that goes into the car? And he said, you measure the distance between the door panel and your seat, your upholstery. And I thought about that. And I think back to like my old Datsun B210. I mean, you could fit a lunchbox next to that seat. And he was saying that in a Mercedes, it's almost touching millimeters. And he said, BYD, it's not there yet. There's still a gap between the seat and the door, and that's okay. It's not going to kill them. They've got time to get it sorted out. At least the gaps are uniform. But he's saying that he's rightly pointing out that when BYD exports cars, they're not bargain basement cars. They're still pretty expensive. They're still comparable in price to all the other EVs for a car that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And if they can overcome pretty good, I honestly believe that they can get that the cars they're exporting are the moneymakers and that they're breaking even in China. And I think that as they ramp up export volume, they'll be able to increase quality, because that's going to come either way. As long as they survive, quality will continue to increase, and that they'll be able to reduce costs because they can divide it by more units sold. And that's going to be what does make BYD survive. Sandy Munro famously, I interviewed him and I said, 10 years out, Tesla's number one, who's number two? And he said, BYD. Didn't even hesitate. BYD. They're vertically integrated. They're making good cars. They're moving serious units.
Make their own batteries.
They make their own batteries. They design their own chips. They will definitely be number two. And then the question is, who's going to be number three behind them? But on that, Sandy has said a lot of great things about a lot of companies that haven't necessarily succeeded. And that's because Sandy is not an investment guy. He's an engineer.
Right. You
can have a well-engineered product that doesn't sell. And he's also looked at some cars that he's done a very superficial assessment on, because he didn't have one to tear apart.
Right.
Until you tear it apart, you don't know what the cost is. You don't know what all the potential shortcomings are. You look at something like Lucid, where they're saying, we've got all this amazing power and all that. Yeah, it's uncorked. It's uncorked. If all that matters, because there was a demo this week from some Chinese car that's even faster than the Plaid. And yeah, great. Let's see if it actually does that. And if it does it make it to 100,000 miles without tearing itself apart?
Right.
Because if you can do that on any vehicle can be performance tuned if you don't care how long it lasts.
And
that's
if you
what race cars
don't,
are.
And what about all the rest of the things that go into the car? So another one that he had on his list was Toyota. And of course, Toyota has a lot of strength. They have a lot of brand strength. They have a lot of, they're in a lot of countries, so they have wide international distribution. They obviously have amazing manufacturing talent, probably second to Tesla, maybe in the automotive world. Well, Mercedes might be in that same group. But anyway, Toyota is really, really good at all these things. And then they've hired Joe Justice. I don't know what that's worth, but it's got to be worth something. And that was new to me. That was news. If correct, I'm not even. I have.
Oh no, it's true.
Oh, it is true.
Oh yeah, no, he's been out there for a month or three.
Okay, I knew he'd been in Japan. Yeah. I just didn't know who he was looking for. So, what do you think about Toyota as being in that class of those who make it to 2030? Yeah.
Yes, I say Toyota 100%. It is Japan's flagship brand. It is their Hyundai Kia. It is their too big to fail. If Toyota fails, it means all the other Japanese makers have also failed, and I don't see that happening. I believe that the government would bail them out if they had to, but I don't think it's going to get to that point. The only concern I have for Toyota is how much debt they have, which is a breathtaking, eye-watering amount, but that's something that can be mitigated a number of ways. And I think a large percentage of it might be recourse debt, which means they've got assets against which they are already secured. And on those secured debts, you can securitize and kick them out if you need to. It just, you don't always want to.
Right.
So Toyota's engineering bench is very deep.
Right.
They came up with the Prius kind of out of thin air. Now, obviously, there was, I'm sure, 10, 20 years of development behind it that we didn't see. Toyota's they've got the tech, they've got the drivetrain, they just have to do it. And there's this very popular notion that Japan won't electrify because they don't want to be beholden to China for batteries.
Right.
And that is ridiculous. People need to stop saying it because Panasonic is Japanese, Samsung is Korean, LG is Korean. Those are three of the biggest EV battery manufacturers in the world.
And Tesla will soon be the largest.
And Tesla will hopefully, if they get the 4680 sorted out, become one of the largest as well. So there are, yes, but China still controls the minerals. Okay, get more minerals. If we're talking LFP batteries, the lithium, iron, and phosphate are all easy to acquire. Those are fine. Those are fungible. Those are readily available. The market will, the lithium is the only one that has any kind. Iron, there's plenty of iron. Phosphate, pick it up on any street corner. And lithium, we're discovering, is not as finite in terms of its refinement as we had been led to believe by the speculation bubble that we saw last year.
Exactly.
So if you're worried about China becoming too powerful in their battery game, don't worry. Remind Panasonic, who's on your own shores, and LG and the others, Samsung, who are Korea is an ally. Just push them to get a little bit more efficiency so they can switch to LFP, and you're right back in business, baby.
So Honda was on his list of likely to make it. They only do about 2 million cars a year now. They've shrunk. Yes, they make a great car. I mean, solid car. Yes, they are the second largest in Japan, and probably they would get bailed out, but they haven't even made a move towards electric cars. I mean, will they still be in business in 2030? But if they don't get on this bandwagon soon, I don't see how they become a survivor.
I think Nissan is in more danger than Honda.
But he didn't list them. He listed Honda.
But Honda is not in a good position. They have this adorable little car that reminds you of the old Civic hatchback, but it has like 130 miles of range.
Yeah.
It's got a silly, like the Honda E, I think is what it's called. It's adorable, but you're not going to sell that. That's not going to save the company. Honda used to be such a big, high quality brand. The Accord was from the 80s on was just rock solid and very popular and very affordable. And its price just kept creeping and the quality kept falling. I was in a Accord that was maybe 4 years old. And all I could think was just how cheaply appointed it was. It felt like an economy car, and it wasn't. It was a $35,000 car.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't understand what had happened. So I am not as convinced that Honda's moving in the right direction. They don't have the same kind of engineering bench as Toyota. Still very good engineers, very good manufacturing. But you can't move in the right direction if you don't take the first step.
And then he goes on to make a tough call, Hyundai and Kia.
What about
Hyundai Kia. He said that was a tough call. He's got Honda with 2 million cars a year as a definite, and he's got Hyundai Kia. I think they're at 3.5 or 4 million, 6 million. Anyway,
they're at 6,
much bigger than Honda. And they're building a $5 billion plant in the United States, which is a smart move. I couldn't understand why that would be a tough call. I think they end up number 3, or maybe number 4.
For failing or succeeding?
Number 4 in the pecking order. Tesla, BYD, and then maybe Hyundai, maybe Stellantis, which didn't even make the list either.
According to worldwide car sales on factorywarrantylist.com, Hyundai Kia 6.8 million in
6.8. Yeah, I knew it was big. So
they're my only concern is they're really just half-assing it. The idea that you're going to use an ICE platform to build an EV is wrong. You're going to end up with something that's not terribly good at being either one. Their software is abysmal, but that can be fixed, or they could license it from somebody who knows what they're doing. I don't know. But that's, I don't see Hyundai Kia going down. Again, they are the crown jewel of the Korean automotive world. There's not even a second place really.
Right.
So I don't see that concern. I would add that another reason Tesla's worth so much is because there's a non-zero chance that their tech ends up being licensed to others. And that would be tremendous.
Well, was that Nick Colas that was saying that he thought that Tesla should just get out of the manufacturing business altogether and go ahead and just license?
If he said that, I didn't make it that far in the video. I only got about 45 minutes in. But
somebody said that over the weekend. I can't remember who that was.
He did say somebody still has to make the cars. So, because he was talking about software at one point and saying that, it was in the Android Apple discussion where he was saying that you're getting to a question of software versus hardware. And at the end of the day, someone still needs to make the hardware.
He finally said that he mentioned Stellantis kind of in the same breath with Hyundai Kia as, they look like they'll be okay. Tough call, he called it. Stellantis, I think, is shockingly shocks me with how well they're doing. We don't really pay attention to Stellantis so much because their real success is in France and in Europe. And they are international. They're all over the globe. And the cars that we know them for, the old Chrysler vehicles, Jeep and Ram are doing pretty dang good. And they are making an effort to get into the E end, but I think they have a pretty good shot at being maybe one of the finishers.
I would agree with you. Chrysler has the Pacifica, which comes as a hybrid. They've got Jeeps that are hybrids, and these are very competent, capable hybrids. And the Pacifica sales have been going up. They've actually surpassed Toyota's Sienna, which is pretty impressive for an American car to retake a spot from a Japanese company. So I think Stellantis is also reasonably secure. Like you said, they've got the strength of their European engineering center and their European manufacturing. So I'm not super worried about them.
Then he says it's going to be hard for GM, Ford, and Volkswagen. So everybody's been talking about how does GM, Ford, and Volkswagen make it. Volkswagen, they at least seem to have some stuff that's working and selling through, as opposed to GM and Ford. GM and Ford, they don't have anything that's working or selling through.
Yeah, tough call. I'm sure we could talk about this for days.
We probably could. But maybe you want to get back in your car and drive it again. I don't know.
That's what I got to do.
gotta
That's what I
get
got to
out
do.
there.
No, I do have to go pretty soon because I've got a couple of interviews I'm doing today with one of my favorite guests. Randy Kirk will be on my
Oh,
channel. So you'll have to come and check it out.
maybe we'll continue part of this.
You were excited. You're like, who is it?
Who is
And then
it?
I told you, and you're like, oh,
Oh, yeah,
no.
that guy. It's not that guy again. It seems like you have him on every week.
Yeah, I can't get rid of him.
I know. What are you going to do? All right, Brian, I think we've covered the Nicholas Colas story as much as I wanted to today. So let's leave it there. And I will say thank you again. And we will go do the other thing.
Sounds like a plan. We'll see all of you over there.
That's right. And thank you all for watching. And it's been great talking to you. Is somebody going to join Patreon? All right, I'm going to make a deal. This is going to be, I've done this once before. It worked a little bit. Actually got a lot of people joining Patreon the last 2 weeks. But the last 2 days, not a single soul. So let's get you up on Patreon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you one free audiobook. You can have 2 free if you want. Or you can have 1 free audiobook and the Cybertruck bottle opener. How's that? 1 and 1. Okay. If you join at the $10 level, not at the $5 level. If you join at the $5 level, you just get the 1 book. Now, if you're completely new to the channel, this is a bottle opener. It is a refrigerator magnet. It is 3mm thick, stainless steel, really, really tough. Comes in a very cool magnetic box that makes it a great gift item. So, you know, it's got all kinds of people now buying them as gifts as a result of the fact that I have so many people that want to buy them as gifts, and they're putting in these larger orders. I do have it all down. I think I put it all down below. I'll have to double check and make sure that it's up to date. They're normally $25 a piece. You get 2 for $45. You get 3 for $60. Okay. You get 100 for $210, and you get 200 for $400. Gets you all the way down to $20 a piece. If you are out of the country, I need you to add another $20 to that for freight, whichever one of those ones you pick. And then if you are, and then please let me know camo or regular. And of course you can mix and match if you buy quantities, however you want to set that up. So is there anything else I have left for you tonight? I think I've said it all. I have enjoyed speaking with you yet again.
Click the link below to get your paperback, Kindle, or audiobook now.